Hey there, welcome back to another week of Leading from the Middle. I'm Helen Young-McLaughlin, and I am excited because this year I decided to connect with 23 different leaders to learn a little bit more about what they believe companies can do to develop their managers and to ensure that they are their most valuable asset. And I do this by asking one question. But before I dive into that, I am so excited to introduce my guest today because not only is she a friend, but she is just amazing. And her name is Arthi Rabikrisson, and she is coming to us from South Africa. I'm so glad she's here today. I want to just share a little bit about Arthi. She is the founder and managing director at Prina Advisory. She is also a global award-winning leadership coach, and I am celebrating her so much because anybody that's working with her is in good hands. She is a capital introducer and also a strategic consultant, and she happens to be a podcast host. So I'm like, oh my gosh, welcome, welcome, Arthi. I could probably say a handful of other things that you're working on as well, but I'm going to turn it over to you and say, how you doing today?
I am doing great, Helen. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your podcast, which is amazing. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm fabulous today.
Good, good. Hey, Arthi, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about the work that you do that really ties into what we're talking about today?
Oh, absolutely, Helen. So, I think one of the key things to mention is that before I actually started my business, I was in investment banking and the financial services industry in South Africa for many years. Well, close to 16 years. And in that time, not only was I also a middle manager moving up the ranks, but when I did go up the ranks, I was somebody who was having to manage others too. So I completely get it. When you're asking this very, very key question about what is it that we need to be doing, I've really got a lot of that insight as well in terms of what I see working, also not working. So I'm so glad that you're doing something like this. You've already given such a lovely bio in terms of what I do at this point in time. And coaching is one of my biggest pillars. I often find with my clients, they're wanting to rush around and be very prescriptive sometimes about the kind of journey a person needs to go through. But actually, you and I know this, Helen, it very much comes down to the individual and what it is they're experiencing at this point in time that can eventually tie in with the organizational values too. So yeah, I think those are some of the things I want to mention as part of what we're going to be chatting a little bit today.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that because I think it's really important. Not only do you
Yeah.
have the firsthand knowledge from when you were managing and leading, you are coaching people around this very topic. And I hope that, with any of the people that I'm interviewing, that they're listening in, they're able to take one, nugget of wisdom and either apply it for themselves or
Yeah,
take it to their, leaders and say, what can we do to, incorporate this into our culture? Um,
absolutely.
so you are familiar with the question, but I'm just going to tee it up just in case anybody's tuning in
Yeah,
for the first
absolutely.
time or needs a refresher, which is what is one thing that companies need to pay closer attention to when it comes to developing their managers?
Mm. It's such a beautiful question, Helen. And, especially over my time in corporate, so many different things initially come to the fore. And I know you've had guests that have spoken about, these different aspects previously, from emotional intelligence to a whole host of other things. And I think in the work that I'm doing now and the kind of environment that we find ourselves in at the moment, for me, the idea around agility and being quite neuro agile is actually something that is very, very necessary. Okay, so let me expand on that. And I know you're familiar with this because as a friend perspective, I am big into the neuroscience space. But what I'm talking about, everybody, is the ability to actually adapt and learn so quickly in a changing environment Because if you think about it, Helen, and you know this, we're living in, let's use the acronym, the Barney world now, right? We moved away from the VUCA world to the
Yeah.
Barney world, which is brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. We actually are trying to figure it out as it's unfolding. It's so dynamic. So something like being adaptable and flexible means that you can then embrace this ability to respond to change. And I know for a lot of people, we think we can embrace change, but when it actually happens to us, it's so difficult. And who more than our middle managers who really do experience this dynamism, more so than sometimes at the senior levels, to be honest, because they're quite operational and doing a lot of things in that way. So that's the one. Think about, we're always being asked to innovate. We're always being asked, oh, you need to solve this problem quickly. You must come up with a new and key and differentiated solution. So, thinking about that, neuroagility ties into that too. It helps you foster that. I've mentioned problem solving. I've mentioned the ability to learn quickly as well. But I think maybe the one other thing I just want to mention before we continue with the conversation is the ability to actually build your resilience, right? So coming with change, coming with the ability to problem solve, the fact that you can be in the situation and manage your stress better, manage those setbacks that will always happen. We're going to learn from this, right? You're going to have a setback, you're going to move forward, but that can show not only yourself that you can do it, but actually build your team around you. So imagine that you can boost your team morale, boost productivity, because you're role modeling how you can be agile, resilient, and all of these good things that I've been mentioning. So yeah,
it is so true. It is so true. But here's where people get stuck, I think.
Yeah.
Is I love a good neuro fact. So I'm glad you're bringing this up. Neuroagility is super important. I would love for us to break it down into a smaller component, if we could, to help people really learn what does it mean to be more neuroagile. Because I do believe we have, and it's shown, it's in the research, we have the ability to rewire the way we approach something, the way we think. And I just don't know that people get it or how it applies to a manager's role. Absolutely. So you're right. You said something earlier. I mean, we are living in this anxious environment. I mean, people are stressed.
Yeah.
People are dealing with layoffs. We're dealing with, an economy that is still struggling. Companies are downsized. It's impacting a lot of people, whether or not their company is being impacted right now, here and today. It's still out there. It's being talked about. So it's kind of feeding into our nervous system and saying, well, what about me? Is it going to happen to me? So this worry starts, and I'm sorry, you take that to work, right?
Yeah.
Carry that to work. So for a manager, especially somebody that's maybe relatively new in their role,
Yes.
and then zooming out to the bigger picture for leaders, how do we help people, A, learn more about neuroagility, and B, implement something? Like if they could walk away today with, oh, let me try that, what would it be?
So I think on the learning perspective, let me answer that one first. It would definitely be about actually thinking of ways to actually unravel the kind of habits and mindsets that are currently at play. So often, Helen, we find ourselves, especially our middle managers, we're always in these routine type of procedures, right? We're always having to do these habitual, we're fighting fires, or we're having to build on opportunities. We're always on this go, go, go. And a lot of the time we're operating from this, we've kind of done this before, I'm going to look at this and we're going to get it done. And actually, if we're looking to be more neuroagile, we have to learn that those habits, while very good to be able to get things done, doesn't necessarily lead to what our senior leaders are looking for, which is all these other things like innovation and bigger type of solutions-driven problem solving. So what we need to learn is that we can actually change our habits. And if we're looking at what it is that we're doing, let's think about stop to think first of all and think about, well, is there a different way to do this than where we're currently doing? And this is potentially now the implementation perspective that we want to get into. So it's actually to kind of stop in our tracks, take a pause, think about why we're doing this at this particular way, and is there a different way to do it? And one of the best things that our team leaders and our middle managers can actually do is bring in our juniors into that process, right? So that whole idea about team morale, people feeling acknowledged and visible. If you're displaying as a manager the fact that I want to hear different voices in the room to help us do things better, man, can you imagine what that's going to do for somebody like me who's a junior, suddenly thinking, oh, my boss is hearing me, my ideas are being heard. Oh, could I possibly be part of this implementation process, perhaps, if my solution is picked? Phenomenal, right? So there's this cascading effect. So maybe just to recap, it's the habit, and then it's the way to actually implement that with something small as, what are some of the ideas around this actually?
So we have to interrupt ourselves. We have to, and you said the word pause, and I am big on the power of the pause. It is something that every single one of my clients hears. It seems too simple sometimes, Arthi, to say, oh, insert the pause. And believe you me, I know it's hard, especially when you're a fast-paced individual and you like to get results done and you want to, keep driving forward. Interrupting and inserting the pause seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? Right. In fact, it's probably not your go-to at any given time, because we've got all of these demands on us. But this is the thing. It's the habit, right? So actually, and I always love to use this term, it's a pattern break. And us as middle managers or those that we are working with who are middle managers, they need that. They need that because apart from just managing people, increasingly, our middle managers are asked to be strategic too. We ask a lot of our middle managers.
That's true. I'm glad you said that because
so actually, there was a brilliant conference that's happening on in South Africa. It's just finished actually, called the Leader X Summit. And one of the speakers, he's a futurist. He actually said something so important, and he said, we can't be operating at peak performance 100% of the time, and nobody should expect that of us. And yet, I just immediately thought to our middle managers when he said that, because they are always having to be beyond 100% all the time because they're so focused on ensuring the business stays afloat. And the other key thing he mentioned was we haven't built into their 100% workday that there needs to be time to actually refresh and gather their thoughts and actually think strategically. So they need thinking space as well. And we've not built that into the mechanism. So it's these like powerful things, Helen, about, how do we actually do this for middle managers? How do we actually ensure that we pattern break what's currently happening for them and insert this almost forcefully maybe, but it becomes a new habit for them if we do that.
And so I have a program called the Leverage Academy where I bring in about 10 managers. We go through this 6-month collaborative journey together, helping to build skills. And one of the things that we talk about, and people look at me like, what, is setting boundaries. And part of that is going on your calendar in advance and blocking off time for planning.
Oh, important.
Strategic thinking, all those types of things. And it's not something that a lot of the people that I've worked with, I won't say all, but the majority is what I'll say, are not used to doing. Not only putting that time in advance on your calendar, but protecting that time. So you can't see that time on your calendar and think, oh yeah, okay, I'll do something else. So what I have found is the people that are consistent with this habit, this new habit, is that they appreciate it tremendously. Like, wow, I just had dedicated time where I told people I'm not available for the next hour or 2 hours, whatever it is. They're getting things done. And it's also the one that they have the hardest staying consistent for a sustainable period of time.
Okay.
So again, it goes back to this agility, thinking about, okay, well, what habit did we allow to, kind of leapfrog into our space? And I think if we can just pay attention to, I love this, coming back to these habits that we're so used to and we're so comfortable with, and reassessing those to see what will give us a different outcome which to
Absolutely.
me sounds like greater productivity, more effectiveness, and actually better well-being. If I don't feel so
So much more
rattled.
happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just happy. I mean, just happy. I mean, a lot of the work, Helen, that I'm doing with
Mhm.
people is exactly around the idea of boundaries, right? And oftentimes when we dig into it, it's these scripts that are running in our head about this is the way things need to be. So yes, I'm implementing
Right.
a change. We get all excited about it, but the consistency bit that you're mentioning, that script has not been effectively worked on.
Um,
So it comes back to the fore and suddenly we regress. And because we are so self-deprecating as people, we bash ourselves about doing something like this. We don't jump back on the horse. We kind of
right.
leave it to be, isn't it? So
Yeah.
this is the thing. Working with coaches like yourself and myself consistently as well will help us to actually work at the root cause, right? And again,
Yes.
we can even take that to a neuroscience perspective about why is the script still running? How is it impacting us neurologically? And
Mhm.
when we actually unravel that, then I think the more meaningful sort of habit change starts to happen because we bring it to consciousness. And
Right.
when someone is conscious about it, they're going to start thinking more
And
deliberately about how to do
true.
it. Yeah.
This is great, Arthi. Thank you so much. If you were to just summarize or bottom line what you would want people to walk away with today, what would you
Yeah.
say?
Oh, we've talked about so many things,
I know
Helen,
it's
but
so
I think
hard.
it really is. But I think because we started off with neuroagility, let me say this to everyone. It's not as difficult as you think. It sounds like it's a really big word, but actually, if you want to break it down to one of the key components that I believe it is, it's actually about habit change and part of that being mindset shift, which is what we've
Mhm.
been talking a little bit about now. So everyone, if that's what you're looking to achieve in terms of developing your skill in your organization, within yourself, within your teams, within the managers as well, think about those habits that are unproductive and let's figure out ways that we can actually shift mindset unequivocally to make it much better and input something more productive and more deliberate for your teams to succeed and the individuals too.
Well said. Well said. If people want to learn more about you, Arthi, and the work that you do, where can they find you?
Oh, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm quite active. So please just look up my name, Arthi Rabikrisson, and connect with me. I'd love to connect with everybody. And of course, if you want to find out more about the work that I do, please do visit my website, www.prernaadvisory.com. And I'm sure in the show notes, you'll put it in there as well, Helen, so everyone can spell it correctly. But I look forward to connecting with all of you. It's been
Great.
wonderful.
Thank you so much for joining us and tuning in to another interview of Leading from the Middle. I'm really looking forward to hearing some feedback from you. I want to connect with you. You can connect with me directly on LinkedIn at Helen Young-McLaughlin. Just hit that hyphen in between Young and McLaughlin, or you can go to my website at helenyoungcoaching.com. Thanks again and have a great day.